I never told my son about the safety deposit box at Chase Bank on Camelback Road. When he married Amber, I made sure she'd never find those keys. I was visiting an old Navy buddy in San Diego when Jake called me, his voice shaking. Dad, she found it. She hired someone to investigate you. They're digging into everything. I'd been preparing for this moment for 5 years, ever since Linda made me promise on her deathbed. So I booked the next flight home to Phoenix. I was sitting on Bill's patio in La Jolla, watching the sunset over the Pacific, when my phone lit up with Jake's name. We'd just cracked open our second round of Coronas, talking about the old days on the USS Nimitz, when everything changed. Dad, I don't know how to say this. Jake sounded like he might throw up. Amber hired a private investigator to look into your finances. He called me at work because your name came up on some database search. Dad, she's been tracking your assets. The beer stopped halfway to my lips. Bill was watching me, probably seeing my face go pale. 5 years. 5 years of watching, documenting, waiting for Amber Hayes to show her true colors. 5 years of keeping Linda's final plan secure. What exactly did this investigator tell you? I kept my voice steady, though my heart was hammering. He said Amber paid him $3,000 to run a comprehensive asset search on Frank Peterson. Bank accounts, property records, business holdings, safety deposit boxes. Dad, why would my wife be investigating you like you're some kind of criminal? Behind Jake's voice, I could hear Amber in their Scottsdale townhouse. Is that your father? Tell him we need to have a family meeting about transparency. Tell him I'm tired of being treated like an outsider. An outsider. The word almost made me laugh. She'd been on the inside for 3 years, spending Jake's money, living in the townhouse he'd bought before they met, driving the Range Rover he'd co-signed for. What she wanted was access to what she couldn't touch. Jake, listen to me very carefully. I pulled up Southwest's website on my phone. Call our attorney, Patricia Mendoza. Her number's in my desk drawer at the house. Tell her it's time. Then call that private investigator back and tell him if he shares any information with Amber, I'll file a complaint with the Arizona Board of Private Investigators. Time for what? What's going on? I'm booking a flight. I'll be home by 9 tonight. And son, there are things about your mother's estate that we need to discuss. Things she made me promise to tell you when the moment was right. I hung up and immediately started searching for flights. Bill set down his beer, his expression serious. He'd known Linda, had been at her funeral 5 years ago when breast cancer finally took her at 59. It's the girl, isn't it? The one you told me about last Christmas, the blogger. Instagram influencer, I corrected. 60,000 followers, posts pictures of her yoga poses and green smoothies, and calls it a career. Linda saw this coming? Linda saw everything coming. The flight from San Diego to Phoenix took 90 minutes, but it felt like 90 hours. I spent the time replaying the past 3 years in my mind, every red flag, every manipulation, every moment I documented in the leather journal that lived in my storage unit in Tempe. I'd known something was wrong the first time Jake brought Amber to Sunday dinner at my house in North Scottsdale. It was November, 3 years ago, and he'd had that particular glow of someone who'd just fallen hard. Dad, I want you to meet someone really special. Amber had arrived in head-to-toe Lululemon, her blonde hair in an Instagram-perfect messy bun, carrying a bottle of wine I later Googled cost $95 for a first dinner with a boyfriend's father. Mr. Peterson, it's such an honor. Jake's told me so much about you in this gorgeous home. North Scottsdale, right? These properties must be worth, what, $1.5 million now with the Arizona real estate boom. First red flag. Who calculates property values at a first meeting? Throughout dinner, she'd peppered me with questions disguised as polite interest. What had I done before retiring? Naval engineering, then private sector consulting. How fascinating. That must have been incredibly lucrative. And Jake mentioned Linda passed away. I'm so sorry. Did she work as well? She was assessing, calculating, building a financial picture. And Jake, my brilliant son, who could negotiate million-dollar commercial real estate deals, couldn't see it. He just saw a beautiful woman who seemed interested in his family. What really got me was when she excused herself to use the bathroom, and I caught her taking a selfie in my living room. Not in the bathroom. In my living room, carefully angling the shot to show my travertine floors, my custom ironwork, my view of Camelback Mountain. She posted it 20 minutes later with the caption, "Sunday dinners with the Peterson family. Blessed." 3 heart emojis. Over the next year, Amber's tactics crystallized. She started suggesting Jake should talk to me about estate planning. Didn't he want to understand the family's financial situation? Wasn't it responsible for couples to know what they stood to inherit? Jake had brought it up one Sunday while we were watching the Cardinals game. "Amber thinks we should discuss your estate plan, Dad. She says it's important for us to understand our financial future together." They'd been dating 10 months. "Your financial future is what you build in your career," I'd said carefully. "Same as I did. Same as your mother did. What Linda and I built is separate." I'd seen the flash of frustration cross his face. Amber had been working on him, making him feel like I was being secretive. When Jake told me he was going to propose, my stomach dropped. The ring he showed me cost $15,000. Money from his savings, money he'd earned, selling commercial properties in downtown Phoenix. "I'm happy for you, son." And I was. I wanted Jake to have what Linda and I had, but I knew Amber couldn't give him that. The wedding was excessive. Amber had insisted on the Boulders Resort in Carefree, $75,000 for the venue alone. Her dress cost $8,000, and she'd bought 2 more for the reception because she needed options for her Instagram content. Flowers cost $12,000. The photographer cost $9,000. Jake had struggled to pay his half. Too proud to ask for help, he'd taken on extra listings, worked weekends. I'd given them $40,000 as a wedding gift. I watched Amber's eyes light up as she mentally calculated what that meant about my total net worth. But I'd also done something else. I'd called Patricia Mendoza, the estate attorney Linda had worked with before she died, and made sure every document was ironclad. Then I'd insisted on a prenuptial agreement. "It's standard for families with estates over a certain threshold," Patricia had explained to them both in her office downtown. "Nothing personal, just protection for assets that existed before the marriage." Amber had signed it, barely glancing at the pages, probably thinking it was a formality, that she'd have years to work around it. She was wrong. After the wedding, things escalated. They'd moved into Jake's townhouse in Scottsdale, the one he'd bought 3 years before meeting her. Within 6 weeks, Amber started complaining. It was too small, too cookie-cutter, too far from her favorite yoga studio in Old Town. "We should move in with your dad," she'd suggested during a Sunday dinner, loud enough for me to hear. "Look at all this space he's not using. And Frank, you're getting older. Wouldn't it be nice to have family around?" I'd shut that down immediately. This house stays exactly as it is. When I'm gone, it'll be Jake's to do with as he pleases. But while I'm alive, it's my space. Her smile had frozen. I'd seen the calculation happening behind her eyes. That's when I started the journal. Every conversation, every manipulation attempt, every red flag. I documented it all in a leather notebook that lived in my storage unit in Tempe, updated every week. The plane touched down at Sky Harbor just after 8:45. I grabbed my carry-on and headed straight to long-term parking. My phone was buzzing with texts from Jake. PI called back. Said Amber's been asking about safety deposit boxes and storage units. Says she told him you're hiding assets from the family. "Dad, what's going on? I'm so confused." I drove through Phoenix's evening traffic, past the lit-up downtown skyline, my mind running through everything I needed to do. First, secure the storage unit. Then, get Patricia involved. Finally, show Jake everything. When I pulled into my driveway in North Scottsdale, both their cars were there. Jake's Audi and Amber's white Range Rover, the one she'd convinced him to co-sign for. $78,000. Monthly payments of $1,300 that came straight out of Jake's commission checks, while Amber contributed nothing. I sat in my truck for a moment, gathering myself. Linda's voice echoed in my memory. "You're stronger than you think, Frank. Protect our boy. Don't let someone take advantage of his good heart." The front door opened before I could turn my key. Jake stood there, looking exhausted, his tie loosened, his usually neat hair disheveled. My son, who rarely showed stress, looked like he'd aged 5 years in one day. Dad. His voice was quiet. She's waiting in the living room. Behind him, Amber appeared. Designer jeans, cashmere sweater. Her blonde hair perfect, despite it being 9 at night. But there was nothing casual about her posture. She looked ready for battle. Frank. Her voice dripped with false sweetness. We need to talk about trust in this family. I stepped into my own home. The house Linda and I had custom built 20 years ago when North Scottsdale was still developing. The house where we'd raised Jake, where every room held memories of our life together. Yes, I said calmly. I believe we do. We arranged ourselves in the living room like chess pieces. I took my recliner, the leather one Linda had given me for my 60th birthday. Jake perched on the edge of the sectional, looking like he wanted to disappear. Amber claimed the other end, her posture perfect. Let's be direct, Amber said, not waiting for anyone else to speak. I hired an investigator because I deserve to know the truth about this family's finances. Jake is my husband. We have a right to understand what assets exist, what's being hidden from us. Assets aren't hidden, I said evenly. They're protected. There's a difference. Protected from your son? She raised an eyebrow. Or protected from me? The question hung in the air. Both, I said. No point in pretending anymore. Linda and I established certain protections before she died. Legal structures designed to ensure Jake's inheritance remains his alone. Amber's laugh was cold. So you made sure I'd never have any claim to this family's money. How trusting. How welcoming. I made sure the legacy Linda and I built would go to our son exactly as she intended. Not to someone who married him 3 years ago and immediately quit working. Dad. Jake finally spoke, his voice strained. You should have told me about this. I had a right to know. The pain in his voice cut deeper than Amber's accusations. This was what I'd feared most. Not her anger, but his hurt. You're right, I said, meeting his eyes. Your mother and I should have explained earlier, but she made me promise to wait until you were ready, until you understood why these protections matter. Ready for what? Amber's voice rose. Ready to accept that your father doesn't trust the woman you married? Ready to see who that woman really is? I pulled out my phone and opened the email I'd prepared on the flight. I spoke with Patricia Mendoza 2 hours ago. She confirmed that the prenuptial agreement you signed before the wedding is valid and enforceable in Arizona. She also reminded me that hiring an investigator to dig into someone's finances without their consent can constitute stalking under Arizona law. Amber's face went pale. What prenup? Her voice wavered. The one you signed 4 days before the wedding. The one Patricia walked you through in her office downtown. The one that explicitly states all assets held in family trusts remain separate property. The one that says, in the event of divorce, you walk away with exactly what you brought into the marriage. I watched her face as memory caught up with panic. She'd signed it, barely reading it, probably thinking it was standard paperwork she'd have years to work around. You tricked me. I protected my son. Jake was staring at both of us like we were strangers. I don't understand. Amber, you knew about the prenup. We discussed it. I thought it was just a formality, she said, her voice rising. I didn't think your father was trying to cut me out of everything. Everything that was never yours, I corrected. The house is held in trust. Linda's patent portfolio is held in trust. My Navy pension and retirement accounts have Jake as sole beneficiary. Even the safety deposit box you've been so curious about. Even if something happened to me tomorrow, you wouldn't see a cent. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jake looked like I'd slapped him. Amber looked like she wanted to hit me. So that's it, she said finally. No matter what I do, no matter how long I stay married to Jake, I'll never be part of this family. You were never trying to be part of this family. You were trying to figure out what you could get. I pulled the leather journal from my bag, the one I'd kept for 3 years. I've documented everything, Amber. Every manipulation, every red flag, every calculated move. I opened to a marked page. November 20th, 3 years ago. First dinner. Quote, these North Scottsdale properties must be worth $1.5 million with the real estate boom. You assessed my home's value before you'd even tried the salad. I flipped forward. August 3rd, 2 years ago. You posted an Instagram photo of my living room with the caption, Sunday dinners with the Peterson family. Blessed. You were building a narrative of wealth for your 60,000 followers. Another page. January 9th this year. You Googled, contesting a trust in Arizona and spousal rights to inheritance on Jake's iPad. That's insane, Amber said, but her voice shook. You've been stalking me. I've been protecting my son from someone I suspected was using him. I pulled out printed screenshots from my bag. These are from your Gmail account. You don't know this, but when you connected your laptop to my Nest Wi-Fi network, you agreed to terms that allow network monitoring for security purposes. It's all legal under Arizona's one-party consent law. Her eyes went wide. You emailed your friend Melissa 6 months ago. Quote, the old man's loaded but paranoid as hell. Jake doesn't even know what he's worth. This is going to take time, but I'll figure it out. Jake made a sound like all the air had left his lungs. And 3 weeks ago, you Googled how to find hidden bank accounts and safety deposit box access laws, Arizona. You've been planning this, I said to Jake. Planning how to access what you think I'm hiding. Amber turned to him, desperation creeping into her voice. Don't let him destroy us like this. He's manipulating you. But Jake was looking at his phone now, his face drained of color. Your texts with Melissa, he said, his voice hollow. I can see them on your MacBook. It's synced to your iCloud. She lunged for his phone, but he stood up, backing away. There are dozens of messages about money, about how you were going to convince me to pressure Dad into signing over assets, about playing the long game. Oh God. Jake's voice broke. This one from last month. Frank's going to San Diego for the weekend. Perfect time to make a move. Once I know what's in that safety deposit box, I'll know exactly what we're working with. I can explain, Amber started, but there was no explanation. Were you ever actually looking for work? Jake asked. You told me you were updating your website, building your brand. I was building our future, she said weakly. You haven't posted on Instagram in 4 months, I said. Your last sponsor was a yoga mat company that paid you $200 9 months ago. You've been living entirely on Jake's income while telling him you're growing your business. Michael sank back onto the sectional, his head in his hands. This was my son learning that the woman he'd pledged his life to had been playing a role. I think you need to leave, Jake said quietly. What? Pack your things. Go stay with Melissa or get a hotel. I need you gone, so I can think. This is half my home, Amber said, all pretense dropped. We're married. You can't just kick me out. Actually, I said, the townhouse is in Jake's name only. He bought it 2 years before he met you. You have no legal claim. Her head whipped toward me. You made sure of that too, didn't you? I know every asset my son owns and how it's titled. That's not control. That's being a careful parent. She looked between us, and for the first time I saw real fear in her eyes. She'd lost, and she knew it. If I leave now, I'm not coming back, she said. A final, desperate threat. Jake met her eyes, tears streaming down his face. I know. The sound of Amber's suitcase wheels on my travertine floors echoed through the house like a death knell. It was nearly 11, and I sat in the living room while Jake stood at the top of the stairs, watching his wife pack 3 years of marriage into 2 bags. Drawers slammed, closets opened and closed. Her angry footsteps moved from bedroom to bathroom and back. When she finally came down, she looked nothing like the polished influencer who'd manipulated her way into our lives. Her hair was messy, her face was blotchy and streaked with mascara. She dragged both suitcases to the door and paused. Michael, I need money for a hotel. He pulled out his wallet slowly and handed her 5 20s. $100. She stared at the cash like it was an insult. The joint account has about 900 in it, Jake said quietly. Use your debit card. What I need, she laughed bitterly, is for you to wake up and see that your father has poisoned you against me. She grabbed the doorknob and yanked it open. The November desert air rushed in, still warm even at night, carrying the smell of creosote and dust. She stood there for a moment. Then she just left. The door clicked shut. Seconds later, we heard the Range Rover start and pull away into the Scottsdale night. The silence was deafening. Jake stood frozen, staring at the door. Then his shoulders started shaking, and he crumpled onto the bottom step. The sobs came deep and wrenching. I moved to sit beside him. He turned into me like he was 8 years old again. I wrapped my arms around my son while he broke apart. "I'm so stupid, Dad. How did I not see it? You loved her. Love makes us blind. 3 years. 3 years wasted. Not wasted. You learned something about people, about yourself. That's not waste. That's life." He pulled back, wiping his eyes. "You tried to warn me. I could feel it. And I told myself, you were just being overprotective. I've had more years to learn about people. And I had the advantage of not being in love with her. Mom would have seen it too, wouldn't she?" From the first handshake, we sat there on the stairs for a long time. Then Jake said, "Tell me everything. The safety deposit box, the storage unit, what Mom set up, no more secrets." So I told him. We sat there, and I explained how Linda had spent her final months planning for a future she wouldn't see. How she'd worked with Patricia Mendoza to create protections specifically designed for this kind of situation. The trust holds this house, Linda's patent portfolio from her engineering work, and my retirement accounts. It's worth about $3.1 million total. Jake's eyes widened. "That much? Your mother was brilliant. She had 6 patents from her work in solar panel efficiency. The licensing fees have been accumulating for years. This house alone is worth about $1.2 million now. The rest is investments that have grown. And it all comes to me when I die, or when I choose to transfer control. Your mother and I originally planned for your 40th birthday. But after tonight, I think we should sit down with Patricia sooner. The prenup, would it have held up? Absolutely. Patricia made it bulletproof. Even if you'd stayed married 50 years, Amber could never have touched the trust assets. That's why she hired the investigator. She'd been trying to figure out what we had. The journal I kept documents every time she asked about finances, every time she tried to manipulate you into pressuring me. Can I see it? The journal? Tomorrow we'll go to the storage unit together. We talked until nearly 2 a.m. About Linda, about the protections, about the 3 years Jake had spent with someone who'd never loved him. Do you think she ever cared about me? Even a little? Maybe in her own way. But it wasn't real love. It had conditions and exit strategies. The next morning, we drove to the storage unit in Tempe. The facility manager, a kind man named Carlos, greeted us with relief. "Mr. Peterson, I'm glad you're back. That investigator was here yesterday asking questions. I told him nothing without your written consent. You did exactly right, Carlos. Thank you." I punched in the code. 0759, July 5th, 1959. Linda's birthday. The unit wasn't large, just 10 by 10, but it was organized meticulously. Filing cabinets along one wall, clearly labeled. But what drew Jake's attention was the other wall. Shelves holding photo albums, boxes of Linda's belongings, her jewelry, her favorite books, her collection of engineering journals. "You kept everything," Jake said, his voice thick. This was my space to remember her. The real reason I never wanted anyone here. Jake picked up a photo album. There was Linda, maybe 35, laughing at the Grand Canyon, healthy and vibrant and alive. I forget what she looked like before she got sick. She was extraordinary. He set the album down and opened one of the filing cabinets. Inside were folders in Linda's precise handwriting, and in the very front, a sealed envelope with Jake's name. "What's this?" "A letter. She wrote it 2 weeks before she died. Told me to give it to you when you were ready." His hands trembled as he opened it, several pages in Linda's handwriting. His eyes moved across the words. Tears began to fall. He read in silence while I stood there, remembering the day she'd written it, how weak she'd been, how determined. When he finished, he looked up. She knew I'd need protection. "Your mother understood the world, and she loved you enough to prepare for it." 8 months passed since that November night. 8 months since Amber had driven away with her 2 suitcases and $100. 8 months of healing, of rebuilding, of learning what life looked like on the other side. The divorce had been swift. Amber had tried to challenge the prenup, hired a lawyer who took one look at Patricia's work and advised her to accept the settlement. She walked away with exactly what she'd brought in: her personal belongings and a car loan she couldn't afford. Last I heard, she'd moved to Austin, still posting Instagram photos of sunrise yoga and overpriced coffee, probably hunting for her next target. Jake had blocked her after she'd called 47 times in the first 2 weeks, alternating between begging and threats. It was Sunday, and it had become our day again. Jake came to the house in North Scottsdale for dinner. Sometimes we cooked, sometimes we ordered in, but mostly we talked. "I met someone," Jake said, cutting into the steak. "I'd actually managed to grill properly. Nothing serious yet. Just coffee a few times. Her name is Emma. She's an ER nurse at Mayo Clinic. We met at a charity run last month." He smiled, a real smile for the first time in months. "She insisted on paying for her own coffee. Said she has a policy about splitting things equally from the start." I felt warmth bloom in my chest. Smart woman. I told her everything. About Amber, the divorce, why it ended. Figured if that scared her off, better to know now. What did she say? She said her sister went through something similar. Understood completely. Then she asked about Mom, and you could see she actually cared about the answer. We ate in comfortable silence. Then Jake set down his fork. "I want to apologize, Dad, for not trusting you, for choosing Amber over your concerns, for making you feel like you couldn't be honest with me. You don't need to apologize for loving someone, but I do need to apologize for being so stubborn that I ignored obvious red flags." He pulled out Linda's letter, now creased from being read dozens of times. "Mom wrote something that keeps coming back to me. She said real love doesn't demand access to bank accounts or insurance policies. Real love is built in small moments, in choosing each other when it's hard." She was right, and I learned from it. I learned what I don't want. I learned I'd rather be alone than with someone who only sees dollar signs. I raised my glass. "Your mother would be incredibly proud of you." He clinked his glass against mine. "I've been thinking about the trust, about what we should do with part of it." "What do you mean?" "Mom wanted me to have security, but I've built my own career, my own savings. I don't need all of it. What if we set up a scholarship fund for women in engineering who've lost a parent to cancer, help them the way Mom would have wanted?" I felt tears sting my eyes. She would have loved that idea. We could call it the Linda Peterson STEM Scholarship. Keep enough in trust for security, but use the patent royalties to help others. Your mother would be so proud right now. We spent the rest of the evening planning. By the time Jake left, we'd outlined a scholarship that would help 8 students a year. As I watched his taillights disappear down the street, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not just the absence of conflict. The knowledge that I'd kept my promises. That Linda's love had transcended death. That our son was finally free. The storage unit in Tempe still held all those documents, all those protections. But what it really contained wasn't about money anymore. It was about memory. About a love story that had started 38 years ago on a Navy base in San Diego and was still writing its final chapters. I walked back inside, past the photo of Linda I kept on the mantel. She was 40 in that picture, her smile bright, her eyes full of life. "We did it," I told her quietly. "He's okay. He's going to be fine." And I could almost hear her response. That mix of relief and pride she always showed when our plans worked out. She'd been gone 5 years, but she'd never really left. She was in every protected asset, in every lesson Jake had learned, in every Sunday dinner we shared. Amber had walked away with nothing because she'd never understood what really mattered. She'd seen the house, the accounts, the patents, and thought that was the treasure. She'd missed the real wealth entirely. As I climbed the stairs that night, I thought about Jake's new beginning, about Emma, the nurse who paid for her own coffee, about the scholarship that would help young women who'd lost what Jake had lost. The lock on that storage unit was secure, but what it protected wasn't really about documents anymore. It was about love that had outlasted death, about wisdom passed down, about character that couldn't be bought or sold. And in the end, that was the only legacy that truly mattered.